Thank you, Senator Ossoff. It's good to be back in the Human Rights Subcommittee. You're doing a great job in the subcommittee. Interesting subject, artificial intelligence. I have this hearing today and 2 different briefings this afternoon, and it's not unlike that for the last several weeks, 2 or 3 different briefings a day. And for liberal arts lawyers like myself, I need them all to try to understand some of the technical concepts that we are discussing and more equally important impact that they're going to have on the lives of Americans across the board. We have several bills that we considered before the Senate Judiciary Committee, which go to the subject of the social media platforms and any responsibility they have. The interesting thing is we have 5 bills, all bipartisan bills, Democrats and Republican sponsors, and they all passed this Judiciary Committee unanimously. And the premise behind them was the notion of responsibility on the part of the social media platforms as to what they're posting. Under Section 230, for the longest time, they didn't pay much attention to what was being posted. Now they're starting to pay attention. And that's led to a very active discussion within the ranks of Democrats and Republicans on the Hill about how far we should go in holding them responsible or liable for misconduct. Ms. Reed-Givens, welcome back to the Senate Judiciary Committee. We unanimously approved the Stop CSAM bill, a bill I introduced to crack down on proliferation of child sexual abuse materials online. Your organization, for some reason, opposed the bill. One part of the bill your organization took particular issue with is a provision that pierces Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act and allows CSAM victims to sue platforms that host, store, or otherwise make this illegal content available. We had a classic example at a hearing. A young lady at the age of 15 thought she'd discovered a true boyfriend on the internet, was enticed to send sexually explicit videos and photographs to this person who put them online. She's tried to contact the social media platform that posted them. They wouldn't get back to her. They wouldn't accept any responsibility. They wouldn't remove them. She's been going through this for 20 years now. She's attempted suicide 3 times. She can't hold a job because this person, eventually, whoever is releasing it, finds her and releases the information and the videos again to haunt her along the way. I heard echoes of your argument against the Stop CSAM Act in a recent interview you gave to Bloomberg. In discussing potential liability of a platform like I've described, when a generative AI tool causes harm, you noted that generative AI tools, and I quote you now, do involve users engaging in expressive conduct, end of quote. I'm not sure I understand the expressive conduct of someone who's posting sexually explicit videos of a child. And I also don't understand it would be expressive conduct when I listen to Ms. DiStefano's experience. It seems as though a company that releases a tool that can clone a person's voice should be able to predict some of the ways the tool would be misused. And if they don't put sufficient safety measures in place, they should be held legally accountable. That to me sounds just obvious. So I'm worried about your phrase expressive conduct and your opposition to our bill. Would you like to explain?
I would, Senator. I run an organization that focuses on human rights and the impact of technology on regular people around the world. So the issues that you're phrasing are quite literally the hardest set of opposing tensions that we deal with. And the reason we approach these questions the way that we do is not by any means that we want to limit the ability of victims like that to seek redress. It's how we worry about the impact of those legislation leading to platforms who have a profit motive and who act when they're scared of liability to over-police other types of conduct that are lawful and are expressive. So we worry about the downstream effects of the heavy thumb of regulation. Now, that doesn't mean by any measure that we want companies to turn a blind eye to this or to be inactive. We believe in every force of market pressure, encouraging them to take those responsibilities deeply seriously.
What would you mean by market pressure?
So, for example, the way that platforms now have advertisers potentially threatening to pull their ads if they don't think that they have responsible codes of conduct on their platforms, if they're not enforcing that in meaningful ways. So we, and my organization actively pushes those companies ourselves to be responsible and thoughtful in how they're acting, to be transparent in what they're doing, to be consistent in their approaches. But there's the additional hammer of legal liability. We worry about the long-term effects of how that changes in platforms platforms and leads to over takedowns of what could be expressive conduct in other settings.
See, you talk about the heavy thumb or whatever of government. What we have now is not a heavy thumb. We have a hands-off. We stand by the sidelines and watch this poor victim, watch what happened to Ms. DiStefano, and to argue that we are somehow suppressing the market, perhaps we're asking for responsibility, accountability in the market. And if you made a decision to put a car on the road that was really cheap and you're going to make money on it, unfortunately the brakes are awful, you pay a price for that. So the expression of the market took second place to the safety of the people driving the car and those around them. So I just have to tell you, I disagree with your premise that the market is more important than the individuals who are the victims of it. And I think that asking people to be held accountable for what they have produced and what their actions result in is as basic as justice in America. And to ignore that or to say Section 230 or something like it should continue and stop this child sexual abuse material online exploitation, I think that it goes way too far. Please respond.
Thank you, Senator. Just to be clear, I'm not worried about protecting the market in an abstract notion. I'm worried about protecting other users who are posting lawful content, but for whom automated content filtering and some of the other provisions that companies would use, if they were worried about legal liability, would lead to over-removals. So for example, when we apply these types of mandates, if companies suddenly get worried, and this has happened in the instance of the SESTA-FOSTA bill that was passed by Congress with very noble, understandable intentions to address the scourge of sex trafficking online, we also now understand, analyzing those effects, that sex workers have had a harder time finding online spaces to find community and express their concerns. And that's been documented in terms of the effects. So there is absolutely no questioning the intent of Congress and the very real harms that you're trying to address. But I'm saying that there are unintended consequences for other lawful users in the ecosystem.
So the question is whether we accept the premise that those who have these online platforms have any responsibility to police content, particularly when we're talking about child exploitation and trafficking. For God's sake, there's got to be a line we can draw that protects the marketplace but still doesn't exploit innocent people. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.